Everyone, and welcome to the 2021 ASU Data Conference coordinated by the ASU University Technology Office. My name is Elizabeth, and I'll be your Zoom host. I am our chapter lead for our data analysis and visualization chapter in the University Technology Office. Please remember to stay connected and continue the conversation in our Slack channel at ASU Data Community. We have our recording that is in progress currently. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and that Slack channel. And then I'm going to turn it over to our wonderful presenter, Jennifer Hornsby.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Let's see. Okay.
We do not have the right screen, Jennifer.
Thank you.
And we practiced and everything.
Is this the right screen?
There we go.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining me this morning. My name is Jennifer Hornsby, and I am the Director of Registrar Technology Services in the Registrar's Office. I wanted to share with you this morning some information about who is Regtech and what is Enrollment and Records. Just an overview of what kind of information and data my team provides to you and to the rest of the university. I have worked at ASU for 30 years now, just over 30 years. Most of the time has been in the registrar's office, so this is my background. I did not start out as a data person. I only became immersed in data probably within the last 15 years. I wanted to say that the session this morning is intended for everyone, for all users. It doesn't require any technical expertise or knowledge about data, but I hope that I'm including enough information that even data knights and data wizards will be interested and get something useful out of today. This is my brief agenda. I'm just going to cover who is Regtech and what do we do, what is Enrollment and Records, and what reports are available in our group in analytics. In the analytics portal, in enrollment tracking, maybe some of you just attended this session. Rebecca Berkowitz shared about our enrollment tracking reports. I'm going to show some of our popular pre-built reports and then talk briefly about some options that we have made available to you when you need to customize our reports. Okay, so first of all, who is Regtech and what do we do? We are part of the Registrar's Office, and at ASU, the Registrar's Office is responsible for class registration, inputting grades, awarding degrees, sending diplomas, and sending outgoing transcripts. Those are just the core processes that we are responsible for in the Registrar's Office. The Regtech team that I lead is a team of 10 analysts. We're Registrar Technology Services, so we call ourselves Regtech for short. We support all of the core processes that I just listed for the Registrar's Office. All of these words on the screen have to do with some sort of process that we are directly responsible for maintaining for the university. Most of this happens in PeopleSoft, which is the student information system, the system of record for student academic records. We're responsible for supporting the PeopleSoft pages and processes that maintain these records. Many of you probably use PeopleSoft. Whether you know it or not, you might use it through my ASU or you might use it directly. We are responsible for making sure the pages are working correctly and the processes behind them. So we're responsible for troubleshooting when there's a problem. We're responsible for quarterly updates, which means we get to test the system every few months. Um, we're also responsible for batch processes, which allow us to update thousands, hundreds of thousands of records at one time. We use a process at ASU we call KUBU, which stands for Query Based Update. So our skills for data and reporting for reporting purposes are also actually used to create the queries that select records that we're going to update. So we get not just to report, but we actually get to update the records as well, which is, I think, pretty exciting. Um, we're also responsible for security. PeopleSoft has roles that individual staff can request for access to pages and processes, and my team is responsible for maintaining that security. We're also data trustees, so we provide access to app IDs and the data warehouse, as well as ODS. Um, we're often included in helping to implement projects for the university. So whenever there's a new program announced or a new policy announced, it usually impacts the registrar's office and the records that we're maintaining. So we usually work on all, most of the projects that come through the university. And last but not least, we are responsible for reporting for enrollment and records, including enrollment tracking and student academic records. So our reporting responsibilities is only part of our responsibility at the university. The way that we operate within our team is usually a person who is responsible for a process. I'm going to pick on one, I'm going to say student registration, has the expertise in that process. And so they help with reports. They're the first one who would be selected to help with reports that use that data. A person who is primarily responsible for graduation is the primary responsible person for graduation reports and so on. For our team, it means that the expertise we have about the data and the process that we're inputting or updating, actually we leverage that to help produce reports efficiently. Um, we change responsibilities every few months or every few years. We train backups, and then we get to move on to new responsibilities. So most of the analysts in the Regtech team have um, had the opportunity to work on more processes than they're currently responsible for at the time. So they build on their knowledge and their experience as they go. Um, so it means that most of Regtech has a pretty wide variety of experience for reports. Um, So our reporting in enrollment and records is mostly what we call pre-built reports. Some call them canned reports. These are the most common reports requested from our office across the university. Um, we had a lot of reports in my reports that just retired a few months ago, and we have been working on converting them to the new analytics portal over the last few years. Um, the most commonly used reports are already here in analytics, and they have been for a year or two. The less common reports are not in analytics yet, but are on our to-do list to actually bring them in. Um, right now, our to-do list for enrollment and records is about 100 to 150 reports. Most of them, again, are already available in the analytics portal, especially the most commonly used reports, but we're working on them in the order of the priority is how often and how critical it is, how many users need to use that other data that's not there yet. Um, I'll just back up here and say that the pre-built reports that we publish are intended for anyone at ASU who needs the information to be able to run and retrieve themselves with little or no training. It's supposed to be intuitive. We add information in the details of each report that help explain and clarify some of the information or some of the parameters on the report, because we're serving so many users across the university. About 3,000 users have access to this data. Um, we're trying to provide it in a self-service approach so users can grab and go, can find what they want and get it on their own without needing any help. Um, and basically what we do in this setting is we don't run reports and send to users like by email or other ways. We point them to the portal to retrieve and run the data themselves that they need. Um, there's several reasons for this. One is it's a question of resources and capacity. If we were to run lists and email them to users, we wouldn't have time. We would need a lot larger staff. But it's also for security, because this way we are ensuring that the users who have access to the information have logged in with their own credentials, they have access to the data, they've completed FERPA training and acknowledged that they will follow by FERPA guidelines. Um, I'm going to go to the next slide. Now that I'm talking about FERPA, I wanted to actually talk about who has access. So I think that the URL for the Analytics Enrollment and Records site is in the chat. If you don't have access, then this is the page that you can use to find out how to get access. But basically, everyone who has access to student information in the data warehouse has access to our enrollment and records pre-built reports. And in addition to that, all of the staff in the academic units, the colleges and departments, as well as the student support offices in student services, who have access to PeopleSoft student records to view students' records as far as grades, class registration, major, all of that, automatically have access to enrollment and records. We made that decision early on because there are a lot of reports that academic advising and enrollment staff need to do their job, either for orientation sessions or end of term processing, or maybe they process graduation for their colleges. And so since they already have access to all of that information in the system of record, which is PeopleSoft, we decided to also automatically give them access to the reports. Um, because there's about 3,000 users, I don't think we could keep up with processing requests if we were to not automate it. So again, everyone who has access to PeopleSoft student records or to student information and data warehouse automatically has access to our pre-built reports. If someone doesn't have access yet and they need access to PeopleSoft, there's information on this page how to request PeopleSoft access. If they don't need access to PeopleSoft, but they need access to the reports, there's a link also here how to request access to student information and data warehouse. Are there any questions about access? Um, Either way, if a person has access to student information in PeopleSoft, they would have had to complete FERPA training before they could get that access. So they have gone through the class, they've taken the test, and they have FERPA training. Those who don't have access to PeopleSoft student records have to acknowledge that they are aware of FERPA, what the guidelines are, and that they agree to abide by it. So by putting the pre-built reports that we publish here, we are putting it in the hands of the end user to determine that they are using the data in the way that it should be used according to FERPA. We leave it up to the user to make those decisions about whether the use is appropriate, or they can contact the registrar's office if they have questions about whether it should be used or not for a certain use case. Um, so our pre-built reports in enrollment and records are grouped into these categories. I'm going to go back to the one that's not highlighted. We've grouped them into these categories to help try to make them easier to find. Since I was explaining, we have over 100 reports that will be published here eventually. Most of them are already here, and so these are the categories we have now. We have codes and descriptions, which is everything from academic structure, which is academic program, plan, and subplan. We have student group codes, we have service indicator codes, and more to come. But those are pre-built reports that you can use to find out what the codes are. So if you want to know what the codes are for majors in your college or anything like that, those are on those pages. The courses and classes page is the academic course catalog, as well as the schedule of classes reports and the open classes for orientation. Our end of term processing is reports for grades, academic standing, and Dean's List. We also have enrollment tracking, which is the enrollment reports that count head count, SCH, and FTE. We have graduation reports, so you can get lists of who has applied to graduate, whose degrees have been posted. And we have a lot of student lists, and I'll be going over those in just a few minutes. Last is our new page. With the help of UTO, we have a site now where all of the trainings about how to run these reports that have been recorded are all stored. In addition to these pre-built reports that I'm going to show you right now, I wanted to make sure to add that we also run ad hoc reports for the registrar's office, for enrollment management, for the provost, and for the president's office. Anytime a question is asked about um, a new policy or a new process or a new announcement about a project the university is taking on, we usually are asked to provide information to back up uh, to start the project, things like that. So we do an incredible amount of ad hoc reports. We also run queries to research problems and troubleshoot. Um, So these reports that are here on enrollment and records are just a small part of what we're responsible for doing in Regtech. The first thing I want to show you is enrollment tracking. Um, and if you're following along, I'm not going to show I'm not going to show any FERPA protected information in this presentation today because it's possible that some that are watching don't have access. So I'm going to keep it high level and just explain what some of the reports are and what you might run them for. Some of you might have attended Rebecca's presentation a few minutes ago this morning that went over enrollment tracking, an overview of what the reports are and how to use them. All of those reports are here in enrollment and records in the enrollment tracking page, which looks like this. There's a list of all of the reports that we have available. We have term comparison reports, which are head count, comparing the current term with the last like term a year ago. Those are using the snapshots of frozen data. So a number that was produced a year ago could be exactly reproduced today. We do that for point in time term comparisons. So the university can track how we're doing this semester with how we were doing the same point in time last year. The point in time is not the calendar date, it is the number of days or weeks today is compared to the term start, so that enrollment activity that changes as students register and get closer to the first day of classes is a comparative same point in time. It also means that the 21st day is at the same point in time every semester compared to the first day of the term. The 21st day at ASU is our census. So our census that we use for a lot of trend reporting, where we can look back at more than just the last 2 years. Maybe we'll look at 5 years or 10 years. Um, so these reports, the term comparison reports, can count head count by campus or by college. The quick view doesn't have any parameters. It just runs pretty quickly and will display data that I'll show you in a minute. All of the other reports have some sort of parameter that lets you filter by whatever it is you need to drill down. So by college, department, major. The class funding reports that are on this page are counting head count and SCH and FTE based on the funding of the class versus the student's major. So all of the reports, the student enrollment reports are based on the student's major, but the class funding reports are based on the funding of the classes the student is taking. This Tableau chart that's displayed right here is student head count based on major and based on the campus of their major. So the maroon is the graduate student head count and the gold is the undergraduate student head count. And there are boxes you can select different campuses to see the term comparison change. The reports that are here for student enrollment and the class funding are distributed on a weekly or daily basis, depending on the time of year, to leadership within all of the colleges and all the student services units. Um, they're not distributed until after open enrollment usually, so it will probably be another week or two before spring will start to be distributed to everybody on a weekly basis. But we're running it weekly and we are also making it available here to you if you want to get it yourself without waiting for the distribution. We usually wait until after open enrollment has started simply because during the registration appointment period, there's a lot of fluctuation and changes from one year to the next about who gets appointments during what week can make it either look like we might have a bigger increase in enrollment this year than we really do, or it could make it look like we didn't get a very large increase at all. It's usually best to wait until after open enrollment has started so that those fluctuations don't lead to confusion or maybe panic about how we're doing. The last thing I want to point out on this page is the enrollment tracking data set, which is at the bottom, the link at the bottom of the page. All of these reports that we're looking at right now are produced from data sets that come out of Alteryx workflows that run every morning. These are pretty specifically formatted reports based on requests from leadership. However, you might need a different view or you might want to count by something else than what we're counting by. So that link at the bottom would let you modify or build your own version of these reports that would still tie out to the numbers that we are sharing. These are the most popular reports, the most often run, the ones with the stars. The quick view, like I just said, is what I'm going to show you next. This is the term comparison quick view by campus. And I know it's impossible to read because there's far too much on this page. So I'm going to zoom in and show you a little bit more what you can't read on the page. Student enrollment by campus is counting head count based on the student's major of campus of their major. We count by the 4 campuses in Metro Phoenix. We also count the other locations that are outside of Metro Phoenix, and then we count ASU Online separately. For each campus, we're comparing the current term, which is fall 21, with the last like term, which is fall 20. And then we break them down by what we call new new, returning, and continuing. The first group is the first year students, and those are broken down by Arizona resident, non-resident, and international. We also count new transfers, new visiting university students, new non-degree, returning, and continuing, which doesn't show on this screenshot. We count graduate students by whether they're new degree seeking, new non-degree, or continuing graduate students. There's another enrollment by campus term comparison that can be run where you can select by college, by division, by department, or major. You can even break it down by session code if you wanted the total by session A, B, or C. The difference between this report and the quick view is this report lets you select parameters, whereas the quick view is quick because there are no parameters, so it loads fairly quickly. But otherwise, it's the same data set behind the scenes, so the numbers will always match no matter what you do. This is just a focus zooming in on what the parameters look like. If you run these reports, you would select the parameters starting at the top left, work your way right, and then down. The default is always the semester where open enrollment has passed. So today the default is fall, but by next week the default will be spring when open enrollment has started for spring. You have to select a parameter for each of these values, but you can select all, and then there's a button at the right that says View Report. Even though fall is the default, you can already get spring information on this report. You just have to change the parameter for the term from fall to spring. So that is enrollment tracking. Are there any questions about anything I've covered so far? Okay. I'm going to pick up the speed a little bit. So next I want to show you our student list reports, and these are by far our most popular reports, even more than enrollment tracking. These are reports that you can use to run a list of students by any of these things you see on the page. You can run lists to get a list of students by major. You can get a list of students who are registered showing their major. You can get a list of students, whether they're registered or not, that tells you who is registered or not. Some of these are intended to be used as mailing lists. They include their email addresses, their physical mailing address, and their phone numbers. We have a parent email list. We have the class roster faculty center, which is one of our most popular reports. I'll show you that in just a minute. Some of the other popular reports are the enrolled students, any active program major as of today. And then we have the enrolled students primary major as of today. The difference between those two is the one on the top would let you get students by major even if it's not their primary major, because students can have multiple majors, multiple careers. They could be undergrad and grad at the same time. They can be grad and law at the same time. They can have concurrent degrees. They can have minors and certificates. So when we say primary major, that means something, and I'll go over that at my presentation on Wednesday. Today I'm just going to keep it to one report is only their primary major, and the other report would let you get any of their majors, even if it's not primary. The third report under major, where it says students by major as of today, the difference between that one and the two I just described is that it will list all students, even if they're not registered, but it will tell you who is registered. If you run that one, it will ask you to select a term. The term is so that the information related to registration or GPA or credit hours is going to pull back that term that you selected. So for example, you might select fall 2021. you would still get all students even if they're not registered, but you'll have some columns of data that tells you who's registered and how many hours they're in. The last report I want to highlight is enrolled students data for retention, and that report is just undergraduates, but it has a lot of information on it that academic units have asked for over the years that help them increase their retention rates. Maybe they use it for reaching out to the students, or maybe they use it just to see how they're doing um, at a certain point in time. Okay, so this is the Class Roster Faculty Center report. In this example, I ran the report for spring 2021. I picked the College of New Interdisciplinary Arts. I picked all of the departments. Then I limited it to Math 117 courses. I picked a specific class location, and then I picked the classes. Those are called cascading parameters, which means once I picked the college, the departments that were listed were limited to the college that I had picked. I hope that makes sense. Once I selected Math 117, the class locations that were listed to pick were limited to locations where Math 117 was offered. When you run this report, it runs pretty quickly and it will list all of the students in all of the classes that you filtered to. I'm just displaying the first couple of columns on the page here. Notice that it tells you a distinct count of students that are on the list. There might be more than 275 rows of data if a student is registered for more than one of the classes that you selected. This report indicates when the data was last refreshed, but since this is data warehouse, if you run this report at 9 o'clock in the morning, you'll get the same results if you run it at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, just as an example. That's not going to change throughout the day. We wanted to make it so that anyone running a report, if you run the report, you're going to get the exact same results as someone else as long as you pick the same parameters. Here are some more of the columns included in the report. I have blurred the FERPA protected information, but these are the columns that are about the students in the class. So their ID number, their name, and their enrollment status. Their grading basis, so whoever is running this report can see who's auditing a class versus taking it for credit. And then if grades are posted, you can see the grades. It also shows the date the student registered for the class. The last set of columns on this report will show the date the student dropped, if they have dropped or withdrawn from the class. It shows the student's major, their academic level, their residency status for that term. Their requirement term is their catalog year, and then it has their ASU right and their email address, as well as the FERPA flag. So this report has been used for a lot of different purposes, not simply the course roster, but whenever someone wants to know, let's say, all the students who've taken a certain class and what grades did they get, this report could be used for that as well. I want to show you that on all of our reports, there is a button in the middle for details, and I left it out of my screenshot, but on every single report, there's a link for view details. And for Regtech reports, we have populated a lot of additional information about the filters, the tables, the parameters, what you should use this report for, and if there's anything you need to know about what you shouldn't use it for, which we don't usually have, but the information that's in here should help understand the data. We also include our email address on every report. So if you have a question about it, or it's not working right, or you think the data is not right, and you want to understand more about it, you can always email us and we will do our best to get back to you quickly. So our email address should be easy to find on all of our reports. Next, I'm going to show you our courses and classes reports. So these are the reports that you can use to get the course catalog either by term or the current course catalog. We also have open classes for orientation, and those are real-time data about classes that first-year students typically need to register for during their first semester at ASU. So those can be used to find which classes have open seats. Then we have a whole bunch of classes reports. You can run lists of classes that a student, um, you can run a list of students in a major and get all of the classes those students have taken. Um, we put a link here to the class roster faculty center because we realize that some might navigate one way or the other. It's the same report on both pages. Um, and then we also linked to some of the reports that classroom scheduling has produced, and those are shown at the bottom of the page right now. Um, Again, we wanted to make it easy for you to find reports, even if we didn't create the report. So we work with classroom scheduling to keep those links working. Next is graduation. So um, these reports will show students that applied to graduate. So if you want a list of who's graduating in December or who's graduating next May, that's what this is for. Also, we have the students with degrees awarded by term. Those are two of the most popular reports. Last is students with degrees awarded by plan code. So anytime you need a list all the way back to 1980, that will be a complete list of students in those plan codes. Okay, now end of term processing. So at the end of every fall and spring, and some of these processes are run for summer as well, um, academic units need to run these reports. Academic standing is what we call academic probation, disqualification, and academic warning. This report can be run after the term has ended and grades are due. So right now you could run it for last spring, but it won't be available for fall until the day after grades are due in December. We also publish the frozen data here because often a college will want to know why a student was disqualified or why they were not disqualified. And so we freeze the data at the moment that the process is run so you can see what their GPA and units were at that moment. Since often grades are turned in late or grade changes happen. So that's the purpose of those frozen data sets. Um, then on the flip side, from the students who are not doing very well academically, we have the Dean's List reports. And those are students who have earned the Dean's List award, which shows on their unofficial transcript and on their grade report. And that can be run again after Dean's List has been run every semester, fall and spring. And then all of our grade reports. So we have missing grades needed for students who have financial aid. If grades are not posted by within a certain deadline for students who had federal financial aid, the university might have to bill the student back, which we always want to avoid. So academic units can run those reports to check on which classes don't have grades posted yet and reach out to the faculty to help if they need help. And last is our website for training. So this includes the schedule of classes training, which is not part of the registrar's office, but it is the schedule of classes reports that classroom scheduling did with UTO. And since that data is so critical for enrollment and records, we group it together with our training as well. So in all of this, we work very closely with UTO, with the BI team. They've assisted us in converting reports from my reports from Oracle to Redshift. They've helped with our workflows. They've helped get some trainings done. We might have more trainings coming soon, and if so, they'll be all listed on this same page. The recording link is a recording of the training, and then the page link has instructions that you can download to follow. But these are data sets that are available for you to use to create your own ad hoc reports, not just ad hoc reports, but your own customized reports. So all of the pre-built reports that I just showed you are pre-built, and other than the parameters you can select, you don't have much options as far as customizing or changing. So when you need to customize or change a report that we have produced, these are the options you have. Most of our reports have a lot of data in the columns that you can export to Excel and filter further than what the report let you do in the analytics site. You can also resort it if you want. You can use Excel to create pivots to count students. You can also merge it with other data sets using things like VLOOKUP. Um, the three data sets that were on the previous slide um, are available for you to use Power Query and create your own report. Um, in addition to that, everyone who has a BI desktop has a little more flexibility, and we can work with you to give you copies of our queries either in Hyperion Studio. We can share Report Builder reports with you so you can customize that for your needs. We can also send you the SQL that you can use in any of the applications to process SQL. And we will be publishing our Alteryx workflows that you could modify if you needed to, or um, make your own copy to get exactly what you need.